What is up everyone, it's Saber here and welcome to another Naruto What If you end up liking the video, please consider subscribing. It's free and you can take it back at any time and it really helps me out, and this is my main channel, so if you're interested in what if Naruto was raised by the Joker, or what if Naruto had a shape-shifting bloodline and was insane, go check out my main channel. And if you're interested in what if Naruto was taken over by the Kyuubi when he was born, or what if Naruto was trained by Itachi after leaving Jiraiya, go check out my second channel. And with all of the YouTube formalities out of the way, let's get into it. He stalked through the war-torn streets, his Mako-infused green eyes reflecting the cackling fires that burned around him. It was as if the entire village had become logs caught in some gigantic bonfire, great bellowing infernos claiming everything in their raging path. No one paid attention to the dark-haired man as he silently moved towards the source of the disturbance of this glorious destruction. Occasionally men and women dressed in strange garbs charged towards their target, a titanic nine-tailed fox that practically oozed in malice and hatred as it came thundering towards the settlement that now seemed puny by comparison. Despite the fear exuded by those around him, the swordsman was not frightened in the least. He had dealt with much worse foe after all, and even if his materias no longer functioned, he was still more than a match for the overgrown beast. If they ever come face to face, his broadsword would sever the beast from head to its 9 furry tails. Of course he had hoped that this day would not end in bloodshed right now until he could get his bearing. The last thing he needed is unnecessary attention. In all honesty, he had no idea why he was here in this backwater and primitive area in the first place. It lacked the sophistication and the technological precision of the upper plate Midgar, and the smell of burnt flesh did not help matters. Why was he here when he should have been fighting against the Wutai soldiers? He remembered distinctively that one of the high-ranked Wutai warriors had charged some sort of an attack towards him. Of course he had deflected the beam with careless ease before running the unfortunate man through with his blade. Then his memories drew blank and he could not remember anything afterwards until he was wakened by the earth-shattering howl of the Kyuubi, a spell that manipulated time and space itself. The swordsman mused over the nature of the spell. The Wutai warrior had used no meager feat, if I must say so. He was rather impressed. It was true that Wutai, a place almost devoid of technology, could not hope to match Midgar or Shin-Ra in terms of firepower. However, they made up for it with innovation. This is why even now Shin-Ra is still so hesitant in their war plan. However, he was jarred out of his reverie as one of the warriors in the village patted him on the back roughly. The man was bleeding from several scars and seemed to have lost right eye. A moment ago, I don't think I've seen you around before, stranger, the shinobi said in a low growl, trying to ignore the throbbing pain. But you look like a fighter to me, and hell, we need all the help we could get. The swordsman looked slightly annoyed for a moment, but nodded nonetheless. Very well, he agreed as he tightened his grip up the hilt of the night saber that was strapped to his waist. The ninja returned the nod and began to speed towards the site of the Kyuubi before he could get a few feet. However, the swordsman called out to him, "Here, I think this will help." With that, the man extended his right hand, glowing with a soft aura. A soothing green light washed over the injured shinobi, and almost instantly the bleeding stopped and most of the wounds began to heal at a visible rate. The shinobi looked startled as he examined his body. "You a medic?" he asked in shock. The raven-haired warrior simply shook his head. "No, I'm with soldier." With that, the soldier walked past the stunned shinobi, his eyes glowing with supernatural and the scorching winds of despair. Estuans interius ira vehemente, Estuans interius ira vehemente. Sephiroth. The tail of the Kyuubi slammed down heavily against the earth, causing several stone spikes to shoot upward, impaling half a dozen Chunin who were caught unaware. Some of them died instantly, the sharp rocks piercing their vital organs. They were the lucky ones. Bah ha ha ha. The great demon fox roared as he scooped up a handful of ninjas with one paw and tossed them carelessly into the sky above. "Behold, humans, the instrument of thy destruction has arrived. Suffer and burn in my flames of hatred and wallow in thy miseries for all of eternity." So spoke the fox as fire shot out from his throat, consuming a dozen jonins in its blistering heat. "Hold your positions until the Hokage can get here," one of the jonins screamed as several more shinobis were flung back by the fox's immense powers. It was utter carnage throughout, and the swordsman watched it all from afar with mild interest. It was pitiful to say the least. These shinobis, at least that is what he thought they were called, are absolutely the worst warriors he had ever seen. Their techniques, which seem to be performed with some sort of hand movement, are a disgrace. Even mid-leveled magic packs more punch than that. He saw with a shake of his head as one of the ninjas breathed fire from its mouth, forming a dragon of blazing flames that streaked towards the fox only to singe its fur. Pathetic. A fire spell could do far more damage. If this is the full extent of the strength that these people possessed, then they deserved whatever end coming to them. The world is cruel and unsympathetic, its mercies reserved only for the strong. Such was natural selection at its most brutal. He had heard someone in the crowd call the great creature a demon. A demon? What of it? If they cower in fear just because their opponent happened to prove the stronger, then they are pitiful indeed, for only in conflict does one grow stronger, and only in death can one defy fate. Soldiers understood the concept and thrived in carnage right now. However, he had matters that are more important at hand than to teach those shinobis the true meaning of strength. He had almost found a way back to his world. For whatever this place is, it was definitely not the same place he had come. For one thing, the materias are useless here, an impossibility, since the life stream from which the materias drew power circles the entire planet. For the materias to be totally cut off from the life stream, there was only one explanation. Looks like he's not in Kansas anymore. Sorzamanes et the fourth Hokage swore as he dodged another falling tree branch. The entire forest was on fire, hungry embers licking at the dried leaves and grasses. Damn it all, he was not going to make it on time. He had been on some special S-ranked mission. When he received the urgent summoning from one of his ANBU subordinates, he knew that the ANBU would not have asked for his attention unless something dramatic had taken place, but nothing had prepared him for this. How could anyone expect the demon fox to just drop in and say hi? He was not going to make it on time. The chakra around Konoha is wild, unpredictable, fluctuating in their intensity. In all this chaos, Yondaime could not even begin to locate the seal he had placed in Konoha. In order to perform his Hiraishin no Jutsu, the flying thunder god technique, had taken him as far as the edge of the forest that surrounded Konoha, but no more. The rest of the way must be made on foot. They had been far too lax. After the IWA Konoha war, peace is fine, but it dulls the senses and clouds the mind, a dangerous thing for a shinobi. They were totally unprepared for the fox's invasion, and now they are paying the price. He could hear the screams of the dying as he sped through the woods. His eyes narrowed in barely suppressed anger. Yondaime tried to block out the sound from his ears. A shinobi must remain emotionless at all times while confronting an opponent stronger than he is. The fourth reminded himself coldly, and his enemy would be none other than the nine-tailed fox himself. It was a battle that he had little chance of winning, but still he had to try. On the day he became Hokage, he had made a silent promise beneath the Hokage monument. He will protect Konoha with his life. If there is even one person left to save Estuans Interius, Ira Viamenti Estuans Interius, Ira Viamenti Sephiroth. Sephiroth, the swordsman, looked up in slight surprise as he felt a spike in the energy level of the place. Granted, it was a minor spike, almost infinitesimal compared to the relatively massive mana that the fox generated. However, he had taken notice of it when the others would not. After all, he was not a first-class soldier for nothing, so another piece is added to the playing field. The swordsman mused with interest as he regarded the scene of complete pandemonium around him. I wonder how this will alter the game at hand. That man for the mana signature the newcomer radiated is human in nature, would never make it on time. He is fast for someone outside of the soldier. That is this much the swordsman was willing to admit. However, without any teleportation spell to aid him, he would never reach this village before it is burned to the ground. Should he help the man? Then the warrior wondered. True, he did not want to involve himself in such pitiful battle, but at this the pale swordsman grinned darkly. He did want to see how this fight would reach its conclusion. For your sake, he muttered silently as his being began to fade away. You had better put on one hell of a show for me. Veni as Namimori facius. Veni as Namimori facius. Yondaime looked up in surprise at the figure that blocked his path. The man was in his 30s, tall and rather handsome. In a cold and emotionless way, short black hair rose in spikes on his head. His features were sharp though slightly pale. The man wore what seemed to be a blue combat uniform with twin brown straps extending out from the belt over both shoulders and secured in place at the other end of the belt. Twin metallic shoulder guards were set up. His suit, though they seemed to serve as decoration more than anything, gloves of a strange material encased the stranger's hands, giving off an unearthly glow beneath the moonlight. A single broadsword was secured at the stranger's waist, one that could no doubt deal out much destruction. But the most unsettling thing about the stranger was still his eyes. Though green eyes were not unusual amongst the populace of Konoha, eyes that shined an eerie light on the other hand were. Who are you? The Yondaime asked uncertainly. Friend or foe? Even as he waited for the answer, his hand reached towards one of the kunais strapped behind his belt. The swordsman held up a hand in response. That depends. Who are you? The fourth Hokage grabbed the hilt of the small throwing dagger. I am the fourth Hokage of Konoha, and I suggest you move away. As you surely can see, my village is under assault from that demonic beast. Do not get in my way or I will kill you. The figure laughed, an unsettling sound, cruel and dark. In that case, put away that toy of a knife that you call weapon. I am here to lend you my aid. You will never reach your precious village otherwise. The Yondaime loosened his grip in surprise. What? But why? The swordsman chuckled again, a condescending mocking sound. My motive is my own Hokage. He smirked as he began to draw upon the mana that surrounded them both, though I would suggest that you do not turn down help when it is being offered, especially in such critical time. Damn, it's almost breached our defenses. It cannot reach the village. From the distance came the loud cry. I think your men do not have much time to waste, the swordsman observed casually. The young Hokage nodded. Very good. The swordsman smiled in self-satisfaction. Let us get going then. With a quick gesture, both he and the yondaime disappeared from the forest clearing, leaving only his parting words hanging silently in the night air. By the way, my name is Zeon Vani Vani Venias Namimori Facius Vani Vani Venias Namimori Facius. Yondaime cursed again as he narrowly dodged the fox's attack. Nothing was working on the demon. Even his most prized Rasengan could barely leave a mark on the beast's fiery furs. Damn it all, the stranger who had called himself Zeon was nowhere to be found. The yondaime had the oddest feeling that if Zeon had wanted to, he could have defeated the demon. Then again, even if he could, the yondaime would not burden another with his own battle. This is his village, this is his fight, even if it means to the death. But how can one fight against an opponent that could not be beaten? The yondaime's brain worked furiously as he sought the answers, and it came in the form of a memory. It was his predecessor, the Sandaime Hokage, who had showed it to him. Remember Yondaime 1, the old man had said as he drew open the weathered scroll. Dust and God knows what else filled the ancient chamber, wherein contained the deepest secrets of Kanai, the core of all the forbidden techniques that I have showed to you. Of all the powers held by we the Hokages, this jutsu is the most terrible and cruel by far. Swear to me now that you will never attempt this unless nothing short of absolute doom has befallen our village. Sarutobi's eyes grew deadly serious as he gazed into Yondaime's own. There was no laughter within those eyes, nor the optimism and a slight lecherous air that had always been present in the old Hokage's eyes. There was only a great sadness why the newly installed yondaime had asked the technique now that he had glimpsed it. It seemed unrealistically powerful, supposedly able to seal away any and all living things. Such a seal does not come without a price, thought Yondaime, whose own sensei Jiraiya had been a master of the sealing art. Because the Sandaime began in a grave tone, to use this technique requires the ultimate sacrifice. The yondaime nodded. He had expected this. The stronger the jutsu, the heavier the price. Such is the way of things always had been. What kind of price? A human life. From the old man came the shocking response. Yondaime had not been prepared for that answer. A human life? What kind of monstrous jutsu would require a living sacrifice? How could something so vile be part of Konoha's history? There have been techniques that required living sacrifices before, but those were practiced by the most despicable kinds of villains and low life. But the fourth could not understand why such a hateful practice would be found here of all places. Seeing his successor's shocked expression, the smile, if one could call it that, on Sarutobi's face grew more pain. This is called the dead demon consuming seal. It allows the user to summon the death god Shinigami at the cost of his own soul. However, the scroll you now see is an extension of this technique, one that is more atrocious by far, he continued. Ignoring the look of disbelief, the fourth shot him something even worse than human sacrifice. This jutsu does not require just any human life, it requires the life of the most innocent of all, a being upon whom no sin, no evil could leave its mark, making the act of this sealing the greatest crime of all. The old Hokage's next words seemed to the fourth as if they had been spoken by the devil himself. It also requires the sacrifice of a newborn child. Vani Vani Venias Namimori Facius Vani Vani Venias Namimori Facius. I am so sorry, the yondaime spoke softly, unaware of the chaos all around him as he stared into the child lying asleep in his hands. Forgive me, spirits of the heaven and earth, forgive me, child, for what I am about to do. There is no other way. Allowing a single tear to fall free from his eyes, the Hokage began the forbidden ritual above him. Zeon took it all in with cold detachment, so the man was willing to pay any price necessary in order for victory. Good for him, Zeon knew only too well the feeling in war, the good of the many always comes first. Once he too had been carefree and cheerful as all children had been. Then when he joined soldier, when he made his first choice in battle, his childhood had died inside of him and the warrior took its place. Emotions were for the weak, and so Zeon stripped himself of it. He had forged his mind into a chisel, removing mercilessly anything that weakened him. He had become the ultimate swordsman, and in exchange he had given up his humanity. It was a difficult price to pay, no doubt, but if he were offered the choice again, he would have taken it. Still, there's some things that cannot be changed, the nature of men being one of them. Below him, the fourth had nearly finished the preparation. Strange arcane symbols were painted all around the screaming child, and 6 low burning candles, the only source of light and heat in the small room, encircled him with the final brush stroke that finished the sealing. The yondaime began to chant in An alien tone only those of the Kage level would have recognized the words, for what they are the incantation necessary for summoning one of the most powerful deity in the astral plane. Yondaime was going to summon the Shinigami and imprison the spirit of the fox forever. As the last syllable left his lips, a whoosh of dark fire roared to life from the candles as a phantom figure appeared above the now sleeping child. Wisps of ghostly flames burned around the translucent god, giving him an unearthly aura. Who hath summoned this one to the mortal planes? The death god demanded as his hollow eyes searched the premise of the room, coming to rest upon the kneeling figure of the Yondaime, who had spent much of his chakra in the summoning attempt. "I, Great One," came the shuddering response as the Hokage tried to regain his energy. "I have called thee forth to aid me in the sealing of a great evil." The Shinigami remained unimpressed as he waited to hear the rest of the story. Good and evil are moral applications not associated with those who dealt with death. "What is it that thou wish this one to seal?" The Yondaime gave one last look at the doomed child and steeled his voice. "The nine-tailed fox Kyubi." At this the Shinigami looked surprised. "The demon fox's power is formidable. Even I could not contain the soul of one such as that." The Yondaime nodded. He had expected as such. The fox was an immortal by all accounts, and a soul with an endless life does not depart so readily. However, he had come prepare. "I understand. If thou cannot devour the soul of the fox, then seal it into this child." The Shinigami looked from man to child and waved one of his arms, causing wisps of ghostly flame to flare up around him. "Done. When I return thy soul I keep." And with that he was gone in a swirl of astral energies. "Forgive me, Uzumaki Naruto, for the sin I forced you to bear." With that the fourth rushed out to join the battle, not realizing that hovering above the small structure a figure watched it all with something akin to interest in his glowing green eyes. "Veiny Venias, Gloriosa. Nimimori facius." "Veiny Venias, Nimimori facius. So the child's name is Naruto," thought Zeon as he watched the scene playing out from afar. He had been relatively surprised when the Yondaime had managed to summon the Shinigami. The creature's strength was impressive and would make a dangerous opponent if they were to confront one another. Fortunately for him, it did not come to that. He had cloaked his essence from the Shinigami, and when Zeon wanted to hide, no force on earth could have sought him out. "The newborn is strange," Zeon mused as he observed the child, and for some reason he saw familiarity between the child and himself, a rare occurrence indeed. From what he could gather after listening to the exchange below him, the child would become the vessel to a great power. He was again reminded of himself. After all, Zeon too had housed an alien strength within himself. The Mako energy of the planet flowed through his veins, just as the power of the Kyubi would soon flow through the child's. He could be great as you are. A voice in his head spoke softly, a voice that rarely chose to make itself known, but a voice that Zeon almost always listened to when it did speak up. Zeon stroked his chin absent-mindedly as he landed softly before the child. Yes, he could almost sense the potential of this puny life form before him, and only a child too. "Just imagine what Shinra could do with one such as you." The soldier commander spoke aloud, his voice reverberating in the small room. "You could become one of the greatest warriors my world has ever seen." And who know, a strange smile graced his lips as an idea dawned upon him. The boy, if left to his fate, would have nothing but the hatred of his village. Human mind is truly a pathetic thing, so easily overwhelmed by fear and hate, and logic so readily abandoned. And after this night of death, it is doubtful that the survivors could see the child in any other light. Of course, Zeon did not care at all what the village's reaction is to be. He is far above such trivial matters. He would save the boy from this fate for his personal agenda. For although Zeon would never admit it, he was bored beyond belief. He was all but unstoppable in the world of Gaia, too, and in time such strength without challenge also bred boredom. However, here was a new challenge to be sought, and one that he had never before dealt with. To raise a mere child to become one of the strongest in the world now, that would sufficiently divert his attention from more tedious tasks that he had spent his time later on. Besides, that bastard of a scientist Hojo has been pestering him forever for a new subject to his experimentations. "Come, child, let us see what fate holds for you." In her hands the black light surrounded the child as the fourth looked on with nervous anticipation. Screams of fury rose from the ashen soul of the Kyubi as it struggled against its jailer's will, but it was not to be, for even the strength of the nine-tailed demon lord could not match up to that of the Shinigami. And soon there came a deafening silence as the mist retreated, leaving the boy as he had been before. The ceiling had begun well, not exactly. Several whiskers-like markings had developed on the boy's cheek, probably the after effect of the Kyubi's chakra. "It is done," the Shinigami spoke without feeling. "Now thy soul I shall take from thee." The Yondaime nodded, and with one last sorrowful look at the sleeping child fell to the ground dead, his soul now a part of the Shinigami for all of eternity. "Be strong, Naruto," he whispered as he fell. "Be strong, my Legacy. Then everything stood still for a single moment before the shadow overtook the light. Zeon appeared before the child yet again moments later, his face strangely subdued. However foolish that sacrifice had been, it was nevertheless a noble act. Zeon had always held those with courage in the highest esteem. Come child, he said as he scooped up the babe in one hand. It is time to leave behind this place. Slowly a green glow began to envelope the soldier until there was nothing left of the commander. Zeon had vanished from this world, and with him a newly born Uzumaki Naruto. When the third Hokage arrived in the sealing chamber, all that greeted him was the still form of the fourth and an empty sealing platform. There was nothing to indicate what had taken place here, though the third had thought it was obvious. He was quite sad that his successor had sacrificed his life for the village, but there was nothing he could do to help, and so as ANBUs carried the fallen Hokage to his final resting place. The third informed all those that had gathered that the great Kyuubi no Kitsune had suffered its defeat and subsequent death at the hand of their fourth Hokage, who had given up his life to save the village he had loved so much. Yet in their euphoria at their victory and their sadness of the Yondame's passing, none of the inhabitants of Konoha could ever guess the true fate of the boy that had been sacrificed for their sake, or the strength he could obtain at the hands of the one-winged angel. Sephiroth, a new legend is about to begin. Time skip 6 years later. Shin-Ra Corporation. A single figure stood impatiently at the door of the laboratory, his glowing emerald eyes carefully surveying all that the room held. There was no telling what kind of dangerous artifacts and creatures the bastard Hojo kept here, though his superhuman senses had assured him that it is safe to venture within for now. He was handsome, though a little too cold. Long white hairs cascaded down his back and twin bangs hang before his sharply chiseled face, casting his unnatural eyes into shadows. The man wore a long black trench coat, and upon it was set two metallic shoulder guards, though they were only there for show. Beneath the coat the warrior wore black leather pants and boots and no shirt. The ebony coat seemed to be secured in place via several straps. A single nodachi of ridiculous length hung loosely from the man's waist, a giant of a sword that seemed to be around 6 feet in length, perhaps more. His name is Sephiroth, and he is the commander of the Soldier, an organization of genetically enhanced superhumans that acted as enforcers and executioners for Shin-Ra. Though only 20 of age, the name of Sephiroth has attained legendary status thanks to his exploits in the Wutai/Midgar War, in which he had won many a battle almost single-handedly. Already he has replaced his mentor, the late Zeon, as the #1 swordsman in the world. However, that was all in the past. Right now Sephiroth felt more than a little annoyance at the late Hojo, who still had not shown up. In fact, if not for the fact that Hojo is still an important member of Shin-Ra, Sephiroth would have been more than willing to severe the scientist into a Commander Sephiroth. The voice sounded behind him, a voice full of treachery and deceit. It was like dealing with a slippery snake. It is a pleasure to see you. At this the commander turned to face the scientist, a dangerous glint in his eyes. The man before him is somewhat short and slightly repulsive to look up. It was not because Hojo is particularly ugly, but rather the way he moved, the way he spoke, and the way he generally carried himself made many people feel rather uncomfortable around the deranged scientist. Sephiroth counted himself one of those people, though he could hide his displeasures with ease. It was one of the things he had picked up on the battlefield. A soldier with emotion is a dead soldier. Skip the pleasantries. The silver-haired swordsman growled. The malice in his voice made even Hojo a little afraid. After all, this was a man who had decimated entire squadrons with careless grace. I wanted to know why you have asked for my presence. Keep in mind you have only 2 minutes to explain yourself before I lose my patience. Hojo nodded. He kept forgetting that dealing with Sephiroth is not at all like dealing with the other less powerful members of Shin-Ra. If he had wanted to, the soldier commander could have taken Hojo's own head without much repercussion. Besides, there are always the ambitious individuals who would have applauded at the scientist's unfortunate demise. This way, Commander, he said, showing a level of respect he had rarely needed to call upon. This concern an experiment entrusted to me by your teacher, the previous soldier commander, 6 years ago, 1 year before this foolhardy war had started. At this, Sephiroth raised an ivory eyebrow. A legacy of his late mentor. This is indeed unusual. Zeon had never mentioned anything of this sort to him when he had entrusted Sephiroth with his position. Yes, Hojo continued, unaware of the questions in Sephiroth's mind, and if I do say so myself, it is one of the most successful projects I have had the pleasure of overseeing. In fact, the specimen displays an excellence in battle rivaled perhaps only by yourself. This statement caught Sephiroth's full attention. Now here is something interesting indeed, an experiment that produced a creature with his level of combat ability. Perhaps Hojo is not as useless as he first had thought. Really? Sephiroth's face betrayed none of the emotions he had felt. Are you quite certain? Hojo shrugged as he led Sephiroth deeper into his laboratory. To be honest, I am not sure. Most of the trials the specimen underwent during our testing are mere computer simulations. However, the data suggest that if there are no overt complications, the specimen should perform as we expected it to. Pausing a while To draw breath, the scientist continued. Of course, the specimen's battle ability is severely hampered by his age and his strength, although with time we should be able to overcome these difficulties. His age. Sephiroth frowned at this new revelation. Hojo smirked as he turned to the soldier commander. Did I forget to mention, he asked with feigned innocence, this specimen of mine just turned 6 this year. Sephiroth watched the scene unfolding before him with a mixture of anticipation and surprise. The child, for what else could he call the boy within the test tube, is a genius of a fighter, that much was for sure. Never once in the simulation battle that he had witnessed did the child show any sigh of irritation, fear, excitement, or any other emotion that could disrupt one's judgment. The boy fought with the precision and calculating pace of a first-class soldier and the mercilessness of a killer born. Each of his blows was designed to cause the maximum harm to the opponent or to give himself the greatest advantage. Never once in the battle did the child give in to the battle lust Sephiroth had known so well. This is not just a killer. Sephiroth realized this is a machine of war, an emotionless, unfeeling creature bred for destruction. What do you think of my most brilliant creation? Hojo asked, a superior smile upon his features. Sephiroth could not help but agree. The man may be a slimy bastard, but his brilliance is not to be denied. Very impressive. He nodded. Give him a few years and he may become one of the most powerful soldier in history. His Mako-infused eyes bore into Hojo's own. Provided, of course, that you have subjected him to the same treatment as the rest of us. The scientist chuckled. Very observant, Commander Sephiroth. Of course the boy had been injected with Mako. I would not have my specimen at any form of disadvantage. Sephiroth stood up and walked over to the container that now held the sleeping form of the child. Did you just call him a boy? How strange that you show such sympathy to your own experimentations, he asked, staring intently at the soft features of the future soldier. Or have you gone soft these past few years? Hojo's chuckled turned into full-blown laughter, a sinister and chilling laugh. I do not deny that I have some sort of attachment to this particular specimen, he admitted. It is the longest project I have worked on since leaving. Professor gasped as he said that. He punched in a few keys on the control panel before him, causing several screens to change the data they displayed. But I hardly regard it as anything more than an experiment. An interesting experiment, mind, but an experiment still. Sephiroth said nothing as he regarded Hojo with those Mako-infused eyes that seemed to be able to pierce a man's very soul. Enough of this foolish debate, Hojo, he spoke slowly, a hint of impatience marring his normally calm and collected voice. Tell me why you have brought me here. I am quite certain it is not to gloat your work in front of me. The mad scientist laughed again, his voice all the more deranged as he then spoke. Certainly not, Commander, you know me too well for that, he admitted. Well, it was fun while it lasted. You see, this experiment is not yet perfected. The specimen performed outstandingly in the battle simulations we ran, but I have no idea how it will react in the real world. Adjusting his glasses, Hojo continued, so I ask you this favor, take the boy under your wing and train him. Consider it as the final step of this project. At this he smiled, an even more unsettling smile. Besides, I am rather eager to see how the boy will perform against the Wutai soldiers that have troubled Shinra for so long. Sephiroth's grip on his blade tightened as he came face to face with Hojo. There was killer intent in his eyes, and for a moment Hojo had though his life would have been forfeited. One does not ask such trivial matter of the soldier commander himself, even if the said matter is quite important in Hojo's opinion. The Sephiroth spoke, and the unnatural silence between them shattered. Very well, Hojo, he growled, consider this a favor rendered with that. The commander stalked out of the metallic sliding door, his trench coat billowing behind him. Naruto said nothing as he followed the silver-haired man, the curiosity and the cheerfulness of a normal 6 years old not at all present upon his childish face. Then again, when you have slaughtered thousands of enemies, such things are stripped of you. Naruto knew his purpose, as it had been made clear by Hojo, the scientist charged with overseeing his conditions. He was not a child to be loved or to be pampered like some of the children he had seen on the television that Hojo sometimes allowed him to watch. They were soft, weak, and useless. They could not last a day outside their parents' care. They were pathetic, wasteful, and ultimately just another link in the food chain. He was as a machine born of destruction, and designed to kill. The Mako injections that he had received regularly have already dulled his emotions to the point where fear and anger, pain and joy are abstract concepts for the young specimen. More than once the specimen had wondered, what did happiness feel like? Why did those children smile when he saw nothing to smile about? Then again, it took a human to answer those questions. Naruto was quite sure, after a few of Hojo's rumblings, that he was no longer human, not by a long shot, and so he followed Sephiroth without complaint, without question. When the silver-haired warrior informed him of the transaction that took place, if he could grow stronger under Sephiroth, then so be it. After all, this is his purpose. This is the fate of those who are denied life. They passed winding halls and dimly lit chambers until finally Sephiroth stopped in front of what seemed to be the entrance of a forgery. Not just any forgery, mind you. Within this forge is Shinra technology, At its finest, everything from biometallic weapons to thermo-denote explosives could be found in this little shop of wonders and horrors. Not that Sephiroth or Naruto cared in this regard, they are quite similar. Both are willing to achieve a goal through whatever means necessary. Nothing mattered before that. Hello, Commander. A large man looked surprised as he came out of the forge. He was an imposing looking man, a large beard that reached the base of his neck, hair combed in a military fashion, and a scar near his right eyes. The man carried himself with an air of self-importance and looked like he had been a formidable warrior in his youth, though judging from the birth of the man it seems that he had not been in active combat for quite some time. Sephiroth returned the greeting with a curt nod. He did not like wasting any more time than he could. He had come to the forgery for one thing only, and that is that greetings. Heidegger, he replied coolly. Step aside please, I have come on business. I am certain that we can catch up on the pleasantries of the day later when I have relieved myself of my duty. Heidegger, the head of Shinra's public safety maintenance department, asked. He knew Sephiroth by reputation if by nothing else, and was not surprised by the cold greeting he had received. Most soldiers are like that, completely emotionless, robotic, almost. Mako may have given them superhuman powers, but it also took away the feelings that made a person human in the first place. Duty. Ah, I see. His attention was finally drawn to the boy that followed Sephiroth silently. One look at the boy's eyes, however, and Heidegger could not help but shiver a little. Unlike Sephiroth, the boy is complete and utterly inhuman. There is no trace of anything even remotely akin to emotion within those eyes, and that is saying a lot. As the head of Shinra's military branch of power, Heidegger prided himself on seeing underneath the underneath. He could read most people like a blank sheet of paper just by making eye contact with them. Most people had assumed when they first saw the large and somewhat crude man that Heidegger is another one of those people who is, as they say, all brawn and no brains. Most people were sadly mistaken. Hell, Heidegger could even extract bits and pieces of Sephiroth if he tried really hard, but not this boy and the child. Could this really be given the title of a child? Heidegger could see no more than two empty voids threatening to consume the larger man if he stayed there any longer. What the hell is wrong with the boy, he asked, thoroughly unnerved by those feeling less eyes. Sephiroth looked at the man and smirked, enjoying the fear that danced in Heidegger's eyes. Hojo's experimentation, I would presume, though to what extent is anyone's guess. An understanding dawned upon the head of security's face. He should have known. After all, Hojo is the only one brilliant enough and the only scientist with a complete and utter disregard for morality in all its forms to have attempted something like this. I see. Well, carry on, he said with a nod as he walked away, leaving the soldier and the specimen to their respective silence. Once again Sephiroth looked somewhat surprised as the boy held the Nodachi in his hands. It was shorter than his Masamune, but wider, about 5 or 6 feet in length. Judging from its size, it should be rather heavy, though the child seems to be able to wield the blade in one hand with relative ease. True, using the sword and holding the sword was two completely different things, but Sephiroth did not doubt that in 2 years' time the boy could become a master swordsman with the weapon, though would the boy succeed him is another matter entirely. Is this the weapon you want, he asked in a voice of indifference. Granted, it made his teaching easier since the weapon is so similar to his own, but not by much, since Sephiroth had made a point to master other fighting style as well. The boy only nodded. Why, this is an important question for most soldier. A weapon is far more than a tool of killing. The weapon defined their style, their speed, their strength, and their material arrangements. It could almost be said that it is the weapon that made the soldier. Besides, for a soldier the weapon also becomes his trademark. When engaged with a soldier, one could almost always tell his or her identity just from the weapon they used. Speed, strength, accuracy, came the simple reply. The boy's voice was soft and showed no sign of disuse. Sephiroth nodded to himself. It was a good answer in way beyond what someone of his age should know. Indeed, the sword in the boy's hands seemed a perfect balance of all three. Once the child's strength has fully developed, very well, he said with a nonchalant shrug. If this is the type of weapon you wish to wield, then we shall find a proper smith and forge you one. His only response is silence. The boy knew that these weapons served only as models, and the real weapons of the soldier were forged and customized individually according to their strength and weakness. It was a shame that he could not wield his chosen blade at this moment, but he supposed it was a small loss compared to the quality of the weapon he would soon receive, and so wordlessly Naruto followed Sephiroth as they exited the room, the metallic door closing with hiss behind them. Time skip 2 years later, unnamed battlefield. Naruto watched the watch with calculating eyes. No fear or hesitation wormed its way into the boy's eyes as he scanned the area all around him. So far, he could detect at least 2 different groups moving about his location. one of them Shinra's troops, but the second with a soundless leap Naruto sailed over the tree branches and landed next to one of the Shinra soldier. While the boy had not yet mastered the art of flight like his mentor, he could glide a good distance when he set his mind to it. Now Naruto sir, the Shinra troop gave an estranged yelp which was ended when Naruto placed a hand over the man's mouth. He would not have been able to do this, if not for the fact the man was currently in a crouching position. The man recognized Naruto at once. After all, many are the time when he or another Shinra soldier had seen the blonde child in the company of Sephiroth. At first the men had speculated among themselves whether or not their esteemed commander had certain unique taste. Of course that soon ended when they saw the 8-year-old youth calmly and emotionlessly wipe out an entire squadron of soldiers with a single spell. Then they realized that Sephiroth had taken Naruto under his wing, not because of anything unmentionable, but for the simple fact that the child is very much like the soldier commander, a monster born silence. The voice of Naruto may sound childish, but his tone is able to still the most fearless of men. There's another squad of Wutai nearby. Gather your men and take them out. I trust you will be able to handle these soldiers without much problem. The man nodded, still not daring to utter a sound. Sephiroth may be a monster, but at least he is one with feeling. The child on the other hand, it seems almost as if the boy is not even human. Soundlessly Naruto left the man, who had no idea how close to the truth he had gotten. You could have eliminated the Wutais yourself. From the back of his mind a voice just as cold as his own replied. Naruto smiled and shook his head before he addressed the demon fox sealed within his soul. Not a happy smile, but a smile that promised much pain and suffering. I am not powerful enough physically. Even with the strength you provided, I could barely able to swing my blade. Muramasa, he replied out loud to his fox companion. Since there's no one to overhear them, I would have been defeated. If I use magic, it would be sufficient to eliminate the group, but will also draw needless attention. Since the age of 5, Naruto had known about the existence of another entity within the chamber of his mind, yet like Naruto, the fox had changed as well by the Mako contamination. Much of his bloodthirsty and evil nature had been worn away, resulting in a persona very much like that of Naruto's own, complete and utterly impassive to all things. The only difference between them is that Kyuubi seems to show a greater preference to violence than his host, though not by much. Of course there are advantages to have a 1,000-years-old demon within your soul as well. For one thing, Kyuubi has a much sharp sense than Naruto and could provide the boy with accurate information on enemy locations, distance and more. Also, despite the fact that the great demon is just as alien to the world of Gaia as Naruto, he could still prove to be a valuable source of advice. Besides, he kept Naruto company during many of the missions. True, the Mako-infested fox is not a great talker by anyone's standard, but it was better than nothing. I must concur with this observation, Kyuubi admitted. Your judgment exceeds my own. Unlike his previous self, this Kyuubi has no reorganization of such things as pride or humility. Truth is truth and nothing more. If someone else had seen the truth, then he would simply accept it and learn from it. This is how Kyuubi and Naruto operated, two machines in human skin. However, you could make use of my other persona. The fox piped up again as the Wutai squad moved closer for the kill, not realizing that they have already been discovered. Naruto shook his head. It seems that when his body was subjected to Mako, the powerful poisonous effect of the energy source not only dulled the fox's emotions but also actually created a second persona within the fox's mind, one that could be called upon any time for Naruto or the Kyuubi to use. However, there are drawbacks. The fox's second persona, deemed by both Naruto and the Kyuubi as the Dark Kyuubi, is the manifestation of all the fox's negative feelings such as anger and hatred, only intensified 100 times, making it a literal berserker when it is summoned into battle. Naruto is granted strength, speed and stamina far exceeding what most humans save for a selected few is capable of. Keep in mind he is 8 years old, but more importantly he is granted a regeneration rate that made all but the strongest Kuraga a joke by comparison. If the wound is not fatal within the first second, his regeneration ability can heal it beyond a trace. Of course such powers come with a price. Should Naruto call upon the aid of the Dark Kyuubi, he will turn into a mindless god of destruction, recognizing neither friend or foe until every single living thing within a kilometer's radius have been wiped out from the surface of the planet. With his augmented powers and near unlimited mana supply, Naruto could very well accomplish that feat. The last time he had called upon the Dark Demon, it was not until Sephiroth himself had arrived on the scene that his mindless rampage ceased. Since then Naruto had managed to keep the creature at bay. If I do that, he told Kyuubi, it would attract far more attention than if I use a spell. Agreed. The Kyuubi nodded sagely. In the confines of Naruto's mind he knew better than anyone what his dark side is capable of. Very well, then let us observe this battle as it plays out. And so the two watched as below them two opposing sides got ready to fight. Zack swore as he dodged the shuriken thrown at him. Granted, the thing would not have done too much damage even if it does hit, but that is a moot point since Zack did not want to get hit, it ruined his reputation. And besides, shuriken scars are held to fix with a well-placed swing of his enormous buster sword. Zack shattered the offending shuriken as the piece fell scattered to the ground. Zack turned back to face his opponent, a superior smirk upon his handsome features. Oops, did I hit too hard? He taunted as he leaned the sword against his shoulder. Well, that cheap piece of junk couldn't have cost too much, right? His enemy, on the other hand, was livid. The man before him had not only insulted his weapon, he had insulted the Wutai warrior's pride. The soldier will not live to tell the tale, the Wutai warrior decided darkly as he watched his foe like the graceful hawk stalking its prey. Tell me, boy, he growled as he begins to work a series of hand gestures. Normally a spell is cast via an incantation, but through trials and error the people of Wutai had discovered a different way of spell casting, mainly thorough rapid hand movements. While this method takes much longer, it does give them an element of surprise. Something that had again and again given the Wutai soldiers the upper edge in battle. After all, no one can defend against something that they cannot see coming. What is your name? the warrior asked, stalling for time. Zack smirked as he noticed the warrior's action. Did the man take him to be a fool? Zack and the other combatants have been thoroughly warned of Wutai's ability to cast silent spells, and Zack did not get to where he is today by disregarding orders. True, his rebellious nature and his carefree, almost flirty persona had often set him against his mentors, but when it comes down to it, Zack is still a brilliant soldier because unlike other people, Zack know when to follow his orders. Named Zack, he grinned cockily. Soldier third class. With that he charged at the surprised Wutai, kneeing the man in the stomach. The hand seals broke midway through and an explosion erupted from where the Wutai ninja stood. Zack was able to foresee this and raised up his buster sword like a shield, defending himself from the torrent of raging flame. For a failed fire spell, this one packs a lot of punch. The user of this spell, however, is not quite so luck. Caught in the origin of the burning inferno, the man had been burned to a crisp. Normally Zack would have found this rather humorous if not for the fact that he had discovered that at this moment in time Zack, the third-class soldier, is in very deep doo-doo. The spell was a faraga, and although it was far from being completed, the resulting fire still managed to set half the woods aflame. Now everything within half a kilometer radius burned like the deepest pits of hell. He was royally screwed, thought a dejected Zack. His body may surpass that of a normal human, but in this kind of magic-enhanced fire he could last 20 minutes tops, and from the look of things he'd be hard-passed for time if he made a run for it. Why, oh why did he not learn any magic? Zack mourned as he got ready to run, his buster sword abandoned. He didn't want to leave his best buddy behind, but there was no choice. Hell, if he make it out of this alive, Zack would make a point to learn every water spell in existence unless he was drowning, which means he'd have to learn earth spell. But then if he was caught in an earthquake, God deciding that planning is not his forte. Zack gritted his teeth and was just about to take his first step when a cold voice sounded above him. What era? A sudden torrential rainstorm gathered above Zack's head, dousing everything within its reach with a torrential downpour. Though to Zack it seemed like the storm had been a godsend. Thanks, Zack yelled to the trees, for that is where he had sensed the presence of the one that had used the water spell. His cheer stopped when he felt the point of a blade pressing against his back, and the same impassive voice sounded near his ears. Are you really a soldier to allow your guard down after a possible foe had revealed himself to you? The voice held just the barest hint of annoyance, though Zack was not paying the closest attention to it at the moment. So you are my enemy? he asked, trying to see who it was that held him hostage. From the way the voice sounded, whoever it was, they did not hit puberty. He could just die if his fear came true. God, he'd be the laughingstock of every soldier he had ever known, and most of those who he had yet to make acquaintance with. Unfortunately, the gods above took no pity in the poor soldier, and he soon found himself face to face with a boy of about 8. In the boy's right hand was a sword of 6 feet in length, and one that looked awfully familiar. Of course, Zack is far too concerned with other matters such as his permanently ruined reputation as a warrior. Heavens above, no girl would ever want to go out with him when word gets out about this. The boy spoke again. This time his words caught Zack's complete and undivided attention. All matters of the fairer sex temporarily forgotten. I have no time to waste with a rookie like you, the boy sighed as he drew back his sword. Commander Sephiroth is expecting me soon. Both of Zack's eyebrows shot up as far as they would go, and his eyes widened to the size of 2 saucers. You know Sephiroth, he exclaimed in a state of shock. Hell, he would have been less surprised if Darth Vader himself had dropped in and announced that Zack is in reality his biological son. Of course, Zack's reaction is not unexpected, since he had practically worshipped the ground Sephiroth walked on for God only knows how long. One might even say that our third-class soldier harbors an unhealthy obsession towards the soldier commander. Nothing dirty mind, so get your head out of the gutter. The boy nodded, not at all surprised at seeing the reaction. Most people seem to acted like that when Sephiroth's name is mentioned. It was only natural. Naruto supposed in this world people worshipped power, and by all terms and definitions Sephiroth is power incarnated. Naruto had seen with his own eyes when Sephiroth had sliced apart entire buildings in his wake, and in that moment he knew he could never defeat Sephiroth, no matter what Hojo tried to do to convince his young specimen of otherwise. So when Zack had raised his question, Naruto nodded absent-mindedly, his mind elsewhere. At the moment Zack's face changed from utter depression to exuberance in a second. Naruto was quite surprised to see that he had not injured his muscle from the speed of the movement. Can I? The 15-years-old teen stuttered a few moments before gathering himself. Can I come with you to see Sephiroth? I mean, Naruto shrugged. As you wish, the boy replied indifferently. Hold on tight. And at the next instant both he and Zack vanished from sight. Zack landed panting and shivering on the forest floor. Teleportation is not meant for normal human, he decided. The technique is still in beta. For God's sake, it does not matter what Naruto had said. Teleportation sucks a lot. He felt as if he had just drank 8 barrels of beer minus the drunken stupor, so now he is left sick to the stomach, and if not for the fact that he had wanted to leave a good impression, would have hurled the entire content of his stomach. Go ahead if you wish. Naruto observed the pale boy, and a rare look of bemusement flashed across his face and vanished again just as fast on the battlefield. He had picked up a few emotions, not very strong, but emotions nonetheless. Now he supposed he is experiencing something called happiness. Not quite, from what I can gather. In his mind the QB made himself known. It seems this temporary lit in your mood is brought on by his misfortunes. Such humor stems from mockery, not the true happiness defined by your kind. Naruto nodded at this. The demon fox seems to be correct in this regard. Still, one emotion is as good as another for him, at any rate. So he finished his sentence, enjoying the look of dismay he elicited from Zack. Commander, Sephiroth will not arrive yet for an hour's time. Zack looked incredulous. But that means a pre-verbal light bulb went off over his head. I could have walked here and still made it on time. Naruto allowed himself a secret smile before confirming the youth's suspicion. The specimen had never laughed before in his life. A smile is all that displayed his elated mood, and nothing more. Yes, an ear-piercing scream of damn you could soon be heard, reverberating all through the woodland elsewhere. Sephiroth looked up from the middle of the battle he is currently engaged in. I could sworn I have detected a noise not too far off. The soldier commander muttered to himself before ignoring the sound, and went back to the slaughter. Their swords clashed, and Naruto felt himself being pushed back. He was right. Physically the 15-year-old boy is stronger, but he is raw, unpolished, and is no match for Naruto skill-wise, which incidentally is why they are locked in a stalemate at this moment, with neither side gaining an advantage over the other. Zack had, after being bored shitless from waiting for Sephiroth, had decided to challenge his idol's pupil to a duel. He had wanted to see just how strong the kid was, training under the greatest swordsman of all time. He had not expected for the match to end in stalemate. Zack had not made soldier by being weak after all, and he took some pride in his own abilities in combat. But in the face of Naruto, his combat prowess is all but laughable. He knew all too well that the only reason he is tying with Naruto right now is due to the fact that at age 8 Naruto is physically weak. Each of his sword swing could do little damage even if Zack had allowed himself to be hit, but what Naruto lacked in strength he made it up with his inhuman skills. Each and every blow is aimed at a vital spot with the intention to kill. If Naruto is able to pack enough force behind each of his strikes, Zack would doubtlessly have fallen 100 times over, which happened to be the number of blow Naruto had dealt with his enormous Nodachi. Zack had honestly no idea why the kid had allowed himself to be drawn into a match like this. From what he could read of Naruto's expression, the blonde kid knew the outcome of the match even before it began, and as far as Zack could tell, Naruto is not the kind of person to involve himself in an event from which he could gain no benefit. The boy calculated every move with computer-like precision and reacted accordingly within a second's time. He could see 1,000 different possibilities in a single action and counter each one with minimum effort. It was like fighting against a machine, one that could never make a mistake. Real machines can err due to the fact that their program is dead, following a set path with predetermined deviations, but Naruto is a living, breathing machine that adapts and changes in response to changes in the equation and recalculates its actions according to such. Unlike a true machine, Naruto can easily accept alien factors into the new equation and react to his environment with ever-changing reactions. In other words, Naruto is hell lot more dangerous than anything Zack had ever faced, which brings him back to his original query: why did Naruto agree to fight? Did the boy wish to experience the euphoria of victory? Zack doubted this very much. If Naruto wanted to win, he could have weaved one of the high-leveled spells in his arsenal and blast Zack to kingdom come. If what Naruto had said was true, then even The forbidden spell Ultima is under the blonde's command. If it is victory Naruto wanted, then the boy would not have agreed to bar magic from this battle, but the boy did, to Zack's great puzzlement. Why, he asked as Naruto glided gracefully to another tree branch. Damn it, he wanted to scream. That is cheating. It was not fair that Naruto could fly and he could not. Seriously, how could you even fight against a foe that you cannot even touch? Why did you even bother to fight? I mean, seems to me like you already know what's gonna happen. Naruto nodded curtly at this insightful observation. Perhaps this teen named Zack is not as hopeless as he had first thought. I fight to test my strength, he explained simply. I wish to see how much my physical abilities have increased. Nothing more, Zack swore as he dodged another blow from Naruto, who sailed down from the tree branches and zoomed towards Zack, sword in hand. Well, how much did you improve? Hey, watch it. Naruto turned in midair, a feat that made Zack curse his own lack of magic. Holding the long katana in both hands, Naruto aimed the point of the blade at Zack. My strength is growing at an impressive rate, though it is still below my expectation. Perhaps you should speak to that man Hojo. At this, the QB suggested. He is a deceitful individual, but he does possess the technology to improve our battle capability. Naruto nodded at the thought. He disliked Hojo, even if the man had all but created Naruto. However, he could not help but admit that the man is a genius in his own right, especially when it comes to the augment of power. Naruto had seen some of the more immoral project Hojo had been working on, and had he any conscience would have been horrified. Of course, since Naruto's situation is somewhat unique, he had only been impressed by the results. Some of those creatures could almost be a match for him in his berserker form. Wait, Zack suddenly grasped something in his mind. Does that mean I'm just some sort of test for your power? Naruto nodded in confirmation. He honestly could care less how the teen soldier felt. Well, damn it, Zack mumbled something about overpowered brats under his breath. Can we stop, since you obviously found out whatever the heck you wanted to find out? If that is your wish. Naruto shrugged and leapt down from the top of the tree as soon as he landed. However, Zack charged, grabbing the hilt of his blade. The young soldier brought his sword forward in a wide arc, slamming the side of the Buster Sword against Naruto, who barely managed to put up his own weapon in defense, though the force of the blow still caused him to stumble back several steps. That was uncalled for, he observed emotionlessly. Zack grinned a feral grin. Well, consider that a payback. He chuckled at the look of confusion on the boy's face. Normally Zack fancies himself a very easygoing person who could rarely hold a grudge against anything, particularly against boys almost half his age, but Naruto is different. Whenever he looked upon the blonde, Zack did not see a kid, but someone is equal or even better in both skill and intelligence, and as far as he was concerned, joking around with his equal is fine. Besides, he was almost certain Naruto could have blocked his surprise attack, since he is the pupil of Sephiroth after all. And like my teacher said, Zack continued, ignoring the annoyance glance he was receiving, all is fair in love and war, so basically anything goes. Anything goes. Naruto found the new concept troubling. Well, yeah, Zack nodded and explained. See, unlike a spar where there are rules and things like that, in a battle your number one priority is to survive. So when you are out there fighting away, anything that keeps you alive is fine, since there are no rules to begin with, and even if there are, your opponent is not going to obey them, not when they want to live as well. I see. Naruto became deeply engrossed in this strange philosophy and soon forgot all about Zack, who simply leaned against a tree and began to snore away. An explosion awakened them from the distance, followed seconds later by the sudden appearance of Sephiroth. Naruto showed no sign of surprise as he got up and greeted his mentor, ignoring Zack, whose brain had temporarily forgotten for function. Hello, Naruto. Sephiroth acknowledged his young charge and turned to face Zack. Who is this? Before Zack had a chance to reply, Naruto saved him the effort. His name is Zack, soldier 3rd class, he said coolly as he followed Sephiroth. It seems he idolized you in his own fashion. Sephiroth nodded. He was not too surprised. Most of the boys in Gaia, excluding the parts of the world where Wutai hold influence, hero worship the silver-haired swordsman. Why should he care if there's one more? Listen, he said without looking back, there is a large gathering of Wutai near the city gate. Take care of them while I speak to the mayor. Naruto raised an eyebrow. Sephiroth seemed to have sensed his charge's puzzlement and explained, it seems the city is home to a rather valuable artifact, one that our employers wish to keep out of Wutai's possession. Naruto said nothing but sped away towards the city gates, which stood stoically in the distance. Zack, on the other hand, looked wildly about, uncertain as to where he should go. Follow me if you must. A hint of impatience crept into Sephiroth's voice as he took note of the other boy. But do not make a nuisance of yourself. If there is danger, I will not be there to cover you. Zack puffed his chest a little. Don't worry about me, sir. I can handle my own battle. I am a soldier after all, he added with evident pride. Sephiroth only smirked at his confidence. "Think what you will," he said as he begins to pick up speed. He did not wish to use warp since the enemies that still gathered outside of the city may detect that soldier are not immortals, and you would do well to keep that in mind. "Yes sir," Zack said cheerfully. To be reprimanded by the one and only Sephiroth is almost an honor in its own right. He'd bet 1,000,000 gold that no one else from his town could even met Sephiroth, let alone receive advice from the legendary warrior. The soldier commander could only shake his head, realizing that the boy did not pay a single brain cell of attention to what he had said. Well, he supposed the rookie soldier just had to learn things the hard way. If only the youth was more like Naruto. Sephiroth found himself thinking, who took in everything and forgets nothing. But then again, Naruto is a very special case, as Hojo had repeated over and over again. Forcing back a sigh, the two soldier disappeared from the clearing. Naruto smiled darkly as he snapped the man's neck. He watched as the Wutai soldier fell lifeless to the floor. The man had been the last scout the Wutai had sent, and without him the siege force outside the gate is all but blind towards his presence. Of course he could have just cast a comet spell and sent these men into the abyss of oblivion, but Naruto had other plans in store for the Wutai warriors. The dark Kyuubi is hungry. Naruto could sense the restless stir of the evil creature within his abdomen. The thirst of the devil could only be sated by blood that Naruto is all too willing to shed. It was better to allow the demonic side of his prisoner to have its share of violence here and now, and instead of it taking over at the least opportune time. When Zeon had brought back Naruto, a thorough examination was made of the sleeping babe. Of course Hojo had discovered the presence of Kyuubi, and a study was conducted in its wake. Zeon had been correct about the creature. Of course the fox is a powerful entity, of that Hojo had no doubt. Not the most powerful creature granted, but it could put up a fair fight against a summon. Hojo had hypothesized that the fox's strength is around the level of a high-leveled summon spirit. The theory was never proved, seeing as how the Kyuubi had no chance of free itself, but even Kyuubi itself generally accepted it. Of course this is all a very roundabout way of saying that as of this moment in time, Naruto possesses a very dangerous ace up his sleeve. Not many people could perform a high summon, and although Naruto had established contract with a few high summon spirit and even a sacred spirit, it was far easier just to allow an entity that is the equivalent to take over his body for a limited amount of time. Besides, unlike most possessions, the dark Kyuubi has absolutely no interest in taking control of the body any longer than he needed to, and all he need for the body is to deal out as much destruction as possible with a silent shift in power. Naruto's eyes flickered open and a dark smile graced the normally impassive boy's face. Eyes the color of the deepest abyss gazed back at the soldier's twin pools of eternity, devoid of any trace of light. They were the eyes of the demon that dwelled in the eternal darkness, eyes of the shadow that trailed in the awakening of light. Thundaga, a deep maleficent voice rose from Naruto's throat, one that promised only an apocalyptical end. From high above the heavens a single orb of lightning formed, casting everything around it into its dazzling radiance. For a single second the earth stood still as the Wutais watched in awe at the ball of thunder hanging sinisterly in the silent heaven, and then the ball pulsed a single time and the gates of hell burst forth. A blinding light washed over the battlefield, consuming all in its brilliant grasp. Pillar of thunder like the fist of some angry gods slammed into earth, shaking the very city to its foundation. Again and again the sky rained judgment upon the earth, leaving enormous craters in its wake. Trees, grasses, and everything else were literally uprooted by the all-powerful electric field before being instantly incinerated in the blinding heat and light of Thundaga. It was as if the entire battlefield had become the domain of some ancient lightning deity awakened from its eon-long slumber. Hundreds of Wutais were lost within the raining thunderbolts, and thousands more met their end, as electric shockwaves rippled forth from where the lightning pillars had struck land. When the smoldering ash cleared, all that remained of the invaders were a handful of pitiful-looking soldiers who had survived the devastating spell by sheer luck. Of course these became easy picking for the waiting form of Naruto, whose mind soon took control again as the dark Kyuubi slid back into its shadowy retreat. It was rather fortunate that nothing other than better held the demonic presence's interest. Holy dollar, Zack whispered, having seen the one-sided massacre from a far behind him. Sephiroth allowed himself a chuckle. His reaction had been the same when he first saw the potential the boy had in magic, albeit Sephiroth had hit his shock far better. Most soldiers are either masters of magic or physical combat, but rarely both. Each of the two disciplines required rigorous amount of training and focus. Trying to achieve a degree of proficiency in both areas had proved far too difficult for most warriors to handle. Sephiroth had considered himself one of the special cases, but even then he had favored physical combat over magic. Naruto, on the other hand, may just be that one person who could strike a perfect balance between the two, although at this moment it seems that the boy had a greater degree of accomplishment with magic that is only to be expected since his biological structural did not allow him to reach his full potential bodily. He remembered speaking to Hojo concerning the boy's artificial development, but for once in his entire life Hojo actually rejected a proposal for more experimentation. Boosting the growth of the specimen artificially, the scientist explained, would severely limit the level of strength the boy would otherwise reach, and I do not intend anything but the best for this project, Commander. That had been that Naruto would grow strong, but in his own pace. Sephiroth understood the reason behind it, and for once it was a good reason. Accelerate Naruto's growth would give Naruto strength that he is not ready to handle growing up naturally, and Naruto would slowly settle into his ever-developing power, but to reach that power all at once it would take away the chance. Naruto had to balance his skill and his strength. Sometimes power without discipline is much more a bane than anything else. Still, Sephiroth thought with a satisfied smile as he bounded towards Naruto. Even now the boy is already a name to be feared. Come along, boy, he said to Zack, who followed closely behind him. There is no need for us to be here. And with that, Zack, the third-class soldier, entered Naruto's corner of the world. The fate of the world was forever changed on that day as the planet hurtled towards a path that would either lead to its salvation or its final destruction at the hands of a foe it had combated so many centuries ago. Time skip 1 year later. Midgar. Uzumaki. Naruto allowed himself a soft sigh of defeat as he waited for his friend Zack to arrive. It has been 15 minutes since the second-class soldier went to, as he himself described it, answer a call of nature, but the raven-haired teen is still nowhere to be seen. The 10-year-old boy supposed that the Buster Sword user is up to his old antics again. After another minute has passed and after Naruto had absorbed another page of the book he is currently poring over, he got up slowly and made ready to drag the womanizer teen from whatever lady he is now surely engaged with. Though as he had expected, he did not have to look very hard for the soldier, as seconds later a rather portly man flew out of the bar, followed by a drunken slur of "Take that up your and smoke it, biatch." Again the boy sighed. This was going to be a long day, a very long day. When Naruto had spotted several less savory characters, got up and made towards an intoxicated Zack, knife in hand. "Should we render our associate aid in his mind?" Kyubi asked. His coordination appears to be hampered by the liquid substance. A rarely seen smile graced Naruto's face as he watched the scene coolly. "No, I believe our friend can handle himself in such a situation. Intoxicated or not, he is still of the soldier order. Mere rabbles such as these will not pose much of a threat to him, I think." However, the vessel of Kyubi added as an afterthought, "If unforeseen complications should arise, then we may be required to act on his behalf." Inside his conscious, Kyubi gave a growl of understanding and faded from sight, back into the chamber wherein the spirit of the nine-tailed fox was housed. It would seem that his aid is not needed, though. An amused Naruto as more men were sent sprawling to the floor. It is fortunate that even in his drunken state Zack had remembered to pull his punches, else a fate far worse than bruise and broken bones waited these men. The strength of one who could swing the Buster Sword in one hand is something not to be taken lightly. Naruto had seen Zack demolish concrete walls with his bare fist, yet mankind is truly a foolish race, for even after the display of power the more rowdy customers of the bar is not intimidated in the least. More and more they kept coming, despite the fact that Zack had laid them low with a single blow. Then Naruto saw the dangerous glint that had appeared in the soldier's Mako-infused eyes and knew that now Zack was beginning to get serious, which would be bad considering that most of the people here are mere civilians with no training whatsoever. While Naruto cared nothing for the lives of these commoners, Sephiroth had warned him to keep out of trouble, especially since they are at the heart of Midgard. Just when Naruto was about to step in and end the fight, a new voice sounded in the doorway. The voice is young and still held the trace of innocence that separated men from children, though it sounded oddly muffled, as if the speaker had some sort of clothing covering his mouth. "Enough, break it up. There will be no fighting in Midgar." Into the bar stepped a Shin-Ra guard, bright blue uniform, visors and all, in the young, for judging from the sound he could not have been any older than 15. Guard's hand he carried one of those standard-issued guns common to all Shin-Ra employees. Some of the men laughed and was about to continue teaching the drunken teen a lesson when the guard fired off several shots towards the ceiling of the establishment, effectively catching everyone's attention. "Now you good-for-nothing turds," the youth growled from beneath his mask. "I want no fighting out of you. Do I make myself clear?" The men, now thoroughly silenced by the display, nodded dumbly. Drunk as they were, they still knew better than to try to rush a man with a gun in hand, especially one that didn't seem to hesitate to use it. "You too." The Shin-Ra guard turned his attention to Naruto and Zack, who stood out from the crowd much like two herons would amongst hens. "Follow me." Not wanting to attract any More attention to himself. Naruto nodded and pulled the still disorientated Zack out of the door, ignoring the mutter he gotten on the way. Having walked some distance with the guard, Zack had finally recovered from his intoxication experience. Phew, that was some good beer, he muttered loudly as he stretched his limb. Now why do I feel like I had just been in a fight? Because you have. Before Naruto can speak, the young Shinra guard answered for him. In a lot of trouble you would have stirred up too if I hadn't stepped in. Zack regarded the youth before him for a moment before turning towards Naruto with a quizzical look on his face. Who's the blue? Oh right, the Shinra guard mumbled as he struggled with his face mask. I forgot to introduce myself, although I really don't see why I should. You two being criminals and all. Spiky sun-kissed blonde hair that defied all laws of gravity broke free of their confines. As from a handsome face, a pair of cerulean blue eyes gazed back at them. Name's Cloud. Cloud Strife. Cloud studied the two people standing before him with a cautious eye. These two, his instincts told him, are not at all like the ordinary troublemakers he had to deal with every day since taking a position as a lousy Shinra guard. The pay is good, the young blonde supposed, but the work is shitty and there is absolutely no respect involved. Right back to the two offenders. The taller of the two seemed to be around Cloud's own age, or perhaps a little older, with a mess of spiky black hair and laughing eyes. No one could possibly have taken the teen to be dangerous or even serious for that matter. The teenager wore a simple white shirt and fade blue jeans, nothing that would have drawn attention to him. He looked like someone that had stepped out of a sitcom if not for the gigantic buster sword strapped to his back. Cloud repressed a nervous swallow as he glanced at the sword. It looked like it could do some serious damage if its wielder had put his mind to it, and judging by the numerous scars that adorned the blade, the spiky blonde would have guessed that the weapon and its user had seen their share of battle. But the other boy was someone Cloud could tell right then and there that he should not mess with. The boy had similar blonde lock to his own hairstyle, though the spikes are notably subdued. His face, though still young, is already taking on a handsome appearance, and in a few years the boy would be quite the heartthrob. However, it is the boy's eyes that unnerved him. The most twin pools of cerulean blue gazed back at the young Shinra guard, twin chip of ice within which a pale blue fire danced. These were the eyes of the void, from wherein born all of creation and to wherein the creations meet their end. These were the eyes of one to whom life held no meaning and to whom death meant nothing more than mere words. Try as he might, Cloud could only detect the silver of humanity within those icy depths, the only indication that the boy standing before him is still human. Of course, Cloud had no idea that just a few years ago even that hint of mortality did not exist. Okay, listen, Mr. Cloud, Zack, still with some slur in his voice, addressed the young guard. I appreciate you helping us out of a jam and all, but you know time is money and we've got to run. His eyes flickered a little nervously to his watch, which read 15 minutes to 10. Ah shoot, at this rate I am going to be late for my date, the soldier exclaimed in mock horror. Listen, Naruto, do you mind cooperate with this nice guard while I go and take care of some business? Another one, Naruto asked in mild annoyance, though his face is still the same emotionless mask. I have told you, do not allow your personal life interfere with our mission. Zack rolled his eyes with exasperation. You are too young to understand the meaning of the word love, or what a noble, beautiful concept it is. Why, in a few years you'll be glad I had set a good example for you, my little friend, he said with great enthusiasm as he thumped the younger boy on the back. Naruto was about to retort when an angry Cloud broke through their argument. Look, you two, you can argue all you want once we get to Shinra, but until then, Zack fixed Cloud with a curious stare. Shinra Corp, why would we want to go there? We just came out of it. It was Cloud's turn to be shocked. You returned from there? How? The surprised young man asked. One thing is for sure, if these two actually got out of Shinra alive, then they are not criminals. No one could get out of that place alive if the president wanted you dead, which means that the duo before him is more important than he had first guessed. Zack raised an eyebrow. We are, soldier, why else would we even go to that stuffy old building anyway? He asked, slightly peeved that someone did not recognize his greatness, not realizing that as long as he is with Naruto, the latter would inevitably take up all the attention, leaving none for the poor buster sword user. Cloud felt his mouth gape. Soldier, these two, how could anyone so young be a soldier? The semi-legendary enforcers of Shinra Electric Company scratched that. How could someone so stupid looking be a soldier? Now the blonde kid beside him, Cloud believes those merciless eyes were definitely the eyes of one who had slew thousands, but this clown that got into bar fights for no apparent reason, why the hell did the gods make him a soldier? It offended every fiber of Cloud's being. Naruto felt he had to step in before the reputation of soldier is ruined by Zack's tomfoolery. While he cared nothing for Zack's image, he supposed that as his only friend Zack deserved some break. Do not allow appearance to deceive you, Naruto stated calmly as he stared at Cloud. He may appear to be a fool, but he is much more. Ignoring Zack's look of indignation, he continued, he is a second-class soldier after all. Cloud's eyes widened. A second-class? Zack puffed out his chest importantly. That's right, not bad. At Cloud turned his attention towards Naruto, who had stayed silent. After his words, "And are you a soldier as well?" Zack smiled. He had so loved seeing the look on people's faces right after they find out Naruto's position. "Technically he is not a soldier," he began, and Cloud raised an eyebrow since he is not registered in Shinra database. "However, you my friend are looking at the equivalent of a soldier first class." At this, Zack paused dramatically, and if he could would have had drum roll accompanying his next announcement, and the prized pupil of Sephiroth himself. Cloud felt his jaw slacken. Zack grinned broadly. "Yep, that's the look he had been expecting. Now his day is complete." Naruto, on the other hand, simply sighed. He had wished that his energetic friend would not enjoy himself at his expense. Still, there are some things that the young swordsman could not help, Zack's personality being one of them. "Say Sephiroth," Cloud stammered. He did not worship Sephiroth as much as some of the other children in his town, but that did not mean the young blonde does not look up to the legendary warrior. Heck, even someone who does not idolize Sephiroth at all would have been struck speechless by a revelation of this magnitude. Sephiroth's own protege. Yeah, Zack was just about to start bragging when a sinister voice interrupted the three of them. Well, from the shadows of one of the run-down buildings, 70 or so Wutai ninjas stepped into the sunlight. "How unexpected. We had thought that we'd take out a foolish soldier whose mouth is too big for his head, but to have the great Sephiroth join us is a pleasure. We have not had." The one who had spoken, a ninja dressed in an elaborate battle costume, spoke. His face contorted into a snarl as the name of Sephiroth was mentioned. It was obvious to all the depth of hatred that the ninja bore for the great commander. "The leader would surely reward us beyond our dreams." And then the ninjas struck. Naruto smiled as he summoned his Miramesa, a very useful technique he had learned from his mentor carrying an odachi. Such as is needlessly waste strength, it is better to store the weapon in the nether region and call it forth when in need. The ninja before him opened his eyes wide as the blade flashed once in the air, severing the man in two. Another, sensing his comrade's death, gave a wild war cry as he charged towards Naruto. The young warrior's eyes darkened as he dodged the wild swing and, using his free hand, gave the Wutai a painful blow to the ribs. The Wutai doubled over in pain, stumbling back even as he tried to recover from the blow. Naruto was upon him, his sword drawing a silver arc as it sliced through the air. Not a single drop of blood was spilled as Naruto removed the warrior's head from his neck. Even as he stood over his second kill, a third Wutai leapt from his hiding place, a dagger flashing in the sun as he dived for the kill. He did not even scream as Naruto whirled, slamming a fire-infused fist into his gut. The fire-powered blow incinerated the man in mere seconds. Using the momentum, Naruto followed up with a wild slash, sending out shockwaves in every direction. All around him, Wutais fell like mere flies as the devastating attack made contact with flesh around him. Zack is swinging his buster blade like a maniac, blood splattering from every direction as the sword broke bones and rent flesh. Naruto shook his head. Zack still had such a messy fighting style even after having spent a few months under Sephiroth's tutorage. On his other side, Cloud is doing an admirable job despite having no real training. His gun doubled as a melee weapon as he kept his enemies at bay, either by rewarding those who got close with a painful blow or a face full of lead. Naruto frowned as he decapitated another man. These shinobis are becoming an annoyance, though they had no hope in the world of defeating him. Again and again they threw themselves at the blonde like moths to flame. With lightning speed he slammed the hilt of his blade against one of the Wutai, dazing him as the man bent over from the pain. Naruto warped his hand around the man's windpipe. Electric currents surged from his fingers, ending the man's life cleanly. Sadly, this act of power did not discourage his attackers, but rather fueled their fury as more and more Wutai began to direct their focus upon the youngest of the trio. The other two forgotten. Naruto watched quietly as the sea of Wutai surrounded him. He needed to put an end to as quickly he could still catch the sight of the leader of this group, and judging from the look of fear in the man's eyes, he was about to run for it. Naruto knew that Shinra would want to question the man. The fact that so many Wutai could have gotten into the city is troubling indeed. With a single bound, Naruto shot over the heads of his would-be attackers, yet to their surprise the boy did not land but stayed afloat in the air. By now Naruto had all but mastered the art of flight like his mentor, even if his speed still needed working. Turning to face the throng of faces, Naruto again smiled, a rare smile though a humorless one. A ball of lightning cackled in his palm as he directed it towards the assailants. "Thunder," he whispered, and watched coldly as the sphere of thunder sailed into the crowd. An explosion resulted as the sphere made contact with the bare earth, followed by screams of pure agony that were soon drowned out by the roar of electricity as it blossomed into life. As the occasional spark dissipated harmlessly, only the leader remained, the rest having been turned to nothing more than bits of charred flesh. With a loud curse the man fled, his form all but a blur as he made his escape. "Stay here," Naruto commanded in a cold tone to Cloud and Zack, before turning and took flight towards the direction in which the Wutai had fled his form soon nothing but a speck in the distance. You have nowhere to run, Wutai, Naruto said coldly as he watched the man edging back against the railing. The two of them now stood atop a 100-story building overlooking an empty construction site. The Wutai's escapade had taken him as far as here at the edge of Midgard before Naruto had caught up to him. Give up, or I shall be forced to resort to more drastic measures in your dreams, freak, the Wutai growled as he pulled out a dagger from his belt. Naruto raised his own blade as he readied himself for the fight. I'd rather die than becoming the prisoner of Shinra, and with that the man placed the dagger's hilt in his mouth and jumped. Naruto did not express his surprise but followed a fraction of a second later. Upon reaching the railing, he threw his sword down, the sharp blade scoring against the man's shoulder, causing him to hiss in pain, though it did not dislodge the knife. With a dull thud, the sword past the Wutai and buried itself deep into the brown earth below. Even as it landed, Naruto had dived after the man, pressing his arms and legs together. He dropped like a speeding bullet, overtaking the surprised Wutai with ease. The fact that Naruto had perfect mastery over the element of wind did help matter as well, flashing the man another of his rare smile. Naruto past the startled ninja. It was not a friendly smile, it was the smile of a predator who had just overtaken a helpless prey. At 50 feet above ground, Naruto twisted in the air so that he now fell parallel to the earth with his back facing the ground, pressing his legs against his chest. The young swordsman pushed off against the building, launching himself in another direction, his right hand extending forward as though to grasp something unseen. As he sailed over the buried sword, his fingers wrapped around the hilt, pulling the blade free of its earthy confines. Ending with a graceful flip, Naruto landed harmless on the ground with sword in hand. As he waited for the Wutai landed with a thump, his injured shoulder causing the man to growl in pain as he tried to escape via another route. Naruto stood before him. You have lost, the boy spoke calmly as though nothing out of the ordinary had happened. With a snarl of rage, the Wutai's hand shot up and would have scored a heavy blow had not Naruto stepped away at the last second. Taking the dagger in his other hand, the man made a quick slash, only to realize in shock that his blow had passed through Naruto. An illusion, the man swore as he looked around for the real Naruto, but even as he was about to turn around, a voice stated icily behind him, no one. After image, the man barely managed to bring his dagger up and block the lightning fast slash of the Muramasa steel, and steel met with a resounding clang and several cracks appeared on the Wutai's weapon. The Wutai cried in anger as he jumped back. Damn you boy, he roared, and two fireballs appeared before him. The twin balls of fire suddenly grew in size, turning into two gigantic fire dragons that towered above the clearing. With an earth-shaking roar, the dragons dived after the 10 years old, burning everything in their path. Water the boy amidst the chaos the dragons have made, stated calmly as from the earth twin geyser shot up, extinguishing the fiery serpents with a smoky hiss. Looking at the astounded man, Naruto's eyes narrowed. He was wasting too much time. He had wanted to bring back the man unscathed much, but it seems that he would need to incapacitate him. It may be a few months before the Wutai would be of any use to the interrogators, but that is their problem. The boy charged at the Wutai once more, his blade whistling as it sailed through the air again. The Wutai sought to block the powerful blow, only to discover too late that the strike was a feint. Even as his knife rose up to meet the non-existent danger, Naruto's knee shot upward, slamming hard into the man's gut. The Wutai screamed in pain, for the blow was laced with thunder element, yet unlike the others, the man did not pass out from the attack. With a series of hand gestures, the man cleared himself of the paralysis and attacked once more. Leaping high above Naruto, the man dived towards the young swordsman, a coat of blue flames covering the blade of his dagger. Now taste the power of the Wutai, the man roared as mana exploded from the blade gauntlet. A brilliant blue vortex appeared under Naruto, which soon erupted into a single beam of radiant azure. The blast of the attack ascended the height of the heaven itself, parting the dark clouds that have gathered overhead, bathing the world in a cataclysmic indigo. When the technique faded, nothing was left of Naruto, not even atoms, or so the Wutai had thought. He did not expect the boy to have emerged from the catastrophic blast unscathed, dusting off some imaginary debris from his black overcoat. Naruto addressed the man calmly, so a gauntlet technique, only those of high positions in Wutai are granted the knowledge of such an attack. Even I would not have survived the intense energy of the attack had I not known the weakness of the technique. However, this does confirm my suspicion that you hold important information on your person, one that my employer would very much like to get their hands on. His eyes glowed bright blue as the Mako within them surfaced. Return to Shinra unharmed, or return to Shinra a broken man. It is your choice. I rather die. At the last syllable, the man tossed something to Naruto, which exploded into black smoke before the blonde boy could have caught it with a quick arrow. The boy dispelled the suffocating smoke screen, but the Wutai is nowhere in sight. He must be a very important member of Wutai's court. In his mind, the Kyuubi's thoughts mirrored Naruto's own. If he had to make such a pathetic attempt at escaping from us, indeed, Naruto agreed. If he has chosen the gateway to hell, then so be it. With that, the blonde once more took flight after the running Wutai. He had no idea however that this chase would ensnare yet another pawn into the game of destiny. 10-year-old Yuffie Kisaragi hummed a cheery tone as she congratulated herself on her brilliant escape from Wutai. That place was so boring, father would not let her do anything fun, she thought, her lips forming a cute pout of defiance as she recalled the memories of her stern father who had always ruled the clan and his family with an iron fist deep inside the young girl. She knew that her father cared very much for her safety, but other things are preoccupying the girl's attention, like the sight of Midgar. The technologically advanced city loomed before her, a far outcry from Wutai, a place that seemed to have been frozen in time. Yet at the same time she did not like the city. It smelt awful, a burning acidic stench that offended her every sense. But even worse was the realization that the land itself is dying back in Wutai. The forest and plants, nature itself thrived. As the people of Wutai strived to keep the old ways, they were a people in harmony with nature who took only their share from the life-giver and nothing more. Yet the people of Midgar are different. They pillaged the land until there is nothing left, and they gave nothing back in return. Her father had repeated this over and over. Each time the subject of Midgar or Shinra arose, and now they are even taking the life of the planet itself. The people of Midgar are fools, Godo had said roughly, reading over another report of battle, a cluster of idiots that sought only to hasten their own end. It was true too if Yuffie had been old enough to understand. Ever since Shinra first began their Mako extraction program all those years back, the planet had been dying. Monsters of the land, great fiends that preyed upon the race of men, had been increasing in number and strength. Large sections of forests withered away in mere years. The climate shifted and changed in patterns far too rapid, and Mako itself had become scarce. If Mako is the life of planet, then what could a sudden decrease in its quantity forebode? It is a question few wish to answer. The planet is dying because her children are suffocating it. Miss Yuffie, thank the heavens I found you. From behind the young princess of Wutai, a wizened-looking old man appeared in swirling mana. Behind him several more ninjas had also made their presence known, having been dispatched by Godo to find and retrieve his only daughter and heir Raijin. She squealed in delight as she embraced the old warrior. The ancient shinobi, once the feared thunder god of war, smiled at his young charge. To his enemies he might be a dealer of death, but for the young princess he felt nothing but a grandfatherly love. The girl was like the grandchild he had never had. Raijin, what's that? Yuffie questioned with a puzzled look on her face, pointing to the outskirts of Midgar where occasionally a flash of light could be seen. Raijin narrowed his eyes as he stared at the place and then turned sharply to the ninjas behind him. Take the young princess and go now. The ninjas, sensing urgency in their master's words, nodded as they grabbed the hands of an unwilling Yuffie. Let me go, you big lug, she wailed as she tried fruitlessly to escape the iron grasp of one of the ninjas. I will tell my daddy on you. The ninja who had his hold on Yuffie stared at the princess impassively. If Lord Godo deems that my action is punishable, then so be it, but whatever happens we cannot allow anything to harm you. Forgive my trespassing. Yuffie may have been about to argue or throw a temper tantrum, but no one ever found out. For that moment a figure landed in their midst, a very familiar figure. Zanker, Raijin asked in surprise as he surveyed the beaten-looking man. Could this battered-looking man possibly be the same Zanku that had been hailed as one of the greatest ninjas in all of Wutai? If so, then what kind of foe had the power to crush the fire demon himself? Raijin. Zanku looked surprise, which soon turned to fear as he discovered the form of Yuffie standing a few feet away. Princess, what are you doing here? Never mind, Raijin, taking her and go. I will stall for time. Yuffie seemed confused by this. Uncle Zanku, what were you talking about? What's going on? She was interrupted when a voice as cold as the frozen glaciers cut through the air. You have nowhere to run. Wutai go, Zanku roared as he pushed Raijin back before drawing his dagger and sought to confront his pursuer. He should have known that even in his best condition he was no match for the prowess that is Naruto, but in his current state he could not even put up a decent fight. He felt the sword plunging into his chest, and then he knew no more as his world faded into a bloody crimson. The child turned his face the remaining ninjas, his face a mask of indifference. The sword wound he had delivered was not fatal, and the man would no doubt survive, though given what he knew of the interrogation squad of Shinra, the Wutai would probably wish he hadn't. Who are you? His voice sounded mechanic as he raised the question before Raijin could speak. A shout of anger drew Naruto's attention away. The little girl who had stood behind the old man was now kneeling at the fallen Wutai's side, her face stained by tears. What did you do to Uncle Zanku? She demanded, still too young and innocent to know the concept of death. Uncle Naruto's mind processed the information and his eyes flashed a murderous intent. Then you are of Wutai as well. Your trespassing is a clear violation of the temporary ceasefire agreement. Such blatant disregard for the terms of the cease Fire will be considered an active declaration of war on your part. Raijin paled. He knew all too well that at this moment Wutai stood at the brink of destruction. If they were to be brought to the point of war again, the city of ninjas will truly vanish from this earth. No, he cried, there must be another way. Anything but war. Naruto studied the old man's face for a moment and answered, in the positive. Very well, then you as the offenders must be put to death. With that he attacked. It was truly a massacre. The ninjas were not at all prepared for the ferocity or the power of the onslaught. Many of them were cut down before they had a chance to draw their weapon. Once the remaining shinobis realized what had just occurred, they quickly formed a protective circle around their princess. It seems the child is the most important member, Naruto stated calmly as he summoned several fireballs into his hands. As if armed with minds of their own, the orbs of burning flames arced out from the blonde's stretched fingers and slammed into several ninjas who had leapt into the air to attack him. The ninjas were consumed by fire completely before they had landed. Nothing more than their charred clothes fluttered onto the ground. Raijin closed his eyes tightly, not wanting to see the massacre of his comrades. They were like lambs to the slaughter, and the blonde boy before them was like the devil himself. Quickly he mouthed the incantation of the teleportation spell, gathering every drop of mana in his body. He knew that he had to deliver the princess safely at all cost. Wutai can do without a few ninjas. Wutai cannot do without their leader or the one person that brought him happiness. He was too late as he felt a burning pain in his chest. Looking down, he discovered to his horror that an enormous nodachi had pierced his heart. As life began to leave the old man's body, he could only gaze back one more time at the girl he had loved so before collapsing onto the earth. His soul fled to the darkness of the shades. I am sorry. His dying words never made past his quivering lips as his eyes were dulled forever by death. He had failed. Naruto stood amidst the carnage, his eyes glowing eerily. All around him the ground were baptized in the deep crimson of blood, though not a single drop had fouled his clothing. There were only 3 people left alive as Naruto began to move the unconscious Wutai that he had been pursuing himself, and the girl in front of him. As he raised his sword, he knew that soon there would be only 2. Yet when Yuffie gazed at the face of the demon that had killed so many that she had loved, no fear had shown on her face. Tears ran down her cheeks, mingling with dirt and blood. Her hands too were stained with crimson as she had placed them over the fallen figure of Raijin, the man who she had called more than once grandfather. Why? She sobbed as she questioned Naruto, who found his limb frozen, not with excitement nor fear, but an alien sensation. He did not understand why. Did his chest hurt so when he gazed upon the grieving visage of the young girl? Was he injured, or did the girl possess some sort of power he had not been privy to? For once the Kyuubi did not make himself known. You monster! The last word was hurled like a speeding javelin towards the stock-still boy, and this time the pain was such that he actually reached up and clutched his heart, as though it was the most natural thing to do. Why did he not use a kura? The boy wondered as the pain receded from his detection. He had used it for every other injury, yet somewhere deep within the boy's conscience he had recognized that such a pain could never be cured by any spell. With a deep breath, Naruto turned and sped towards the city again, leaving behind both the girl and the fainted Wutai. Though his face remained as stoic as ever, a close observer would have recognized the raging conflict that is even now taking place within the blonde, for even as he drew his trench coat tighter about himself, his hand is shaking uncontrollably. Still minutes later, Yuffie had been found and taken back by another search team, and Naruto had reached the heart of the city where he once more reigned in his blossoming emotions. And as the sands of time flows once more, the gears of destiny slowly began its unstoppable grind.